if you live long enough to grow old, you're probably going to get a disability. Maybe you'll have a walker, maybe the glaucoma gets to your eyes, maybe you're like, I can't hear you. But if you live long enough, inshallah, you probably will develop a disability. But we now have a generation of children who are like not just visibly disabled, but disabled in the most severe ways. And we need to create an accessible future for them.
Hey, welcome to the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today on the series is a friend of the program, Maysoon Zayid, who does not need an introduction, but she's a comedian, a writer. She's a million things, and she's a wonderful person. Maysoon, thanks so much.
I feel like I do need an introduction. So I have like 900 jobs.
Yeah.
But the main one right now is a comedian because I have 2 big shows coming up at the Art Center. But I'm also a comic book writer. I don't like to say I'm a motivational speaker because it sounds so awful, but apparently I am. I'm a producer of a legendary comedy festival with Dino Abdallah now in its 20th year. And I think one of the things I'm most famous for is sometimes fighting you on Instagram.
This is true. And in addition to all of these things, you are also a professor.
I am. How did I forget that? That's all I've been doing recently. Yeah.
So maybe let's start there. We'll come back to you fighting with me on Instagram in a second, but let's start. So you're at NYU Abu Dhabi right now. You are teaching what is called a J term. Tell us what a J term is.
Okay, what a J term is they shrink down an entire semester into 10 days. 2 5-day weeks, and you have to teach everything you normally would in a whole semester in those hours that you're given. And I love it. I love it. There's no place in the world I want to sit for a whole semester. And I love the fast-paced, I love the global students that you don't get. So I'm coming from Princeton. Right. And people are like, oh, you went from Princeton to NYU. No, NYU Abu Dhabi is like kind of a one of a kind place. Yeah. It's really, the students are like hardcore. They're like there to learn. And I'm used to being in the States where they're there to drink. Like literally they're there to drink. And like my students come to class the next day in the States and they're all like groggy and messed up. And here, like everyone's like super alert. They're like actually into the learning. They're like doing more than I asked them to. But I made a critical Maysoon error. I was offered teach for 2 weeks and then do your shows. And I was like, no, just have the shows be the same days that I'm teaching. And Mikey, I'm supposed to be done by like 3 o'clock every day. I rarely leave the classroom before 8:30 p.m. because my students are so into what we're doing that I can't stop like coaching them and giving them classroom hours, and then I come back and I give them more notes because they're trying so hard to learn. And so, it's like, I do it.
What are they learning? I mean, I'm going to ask a stupid question, but like basically what are you actually teaching them?
I'm teaching them all about cats. Fuzzy cats, hairless cats, earless cats, like my cat, Beyonce. Okay, so I love designing an original course whenever I teach. So my 4 semesters at Princeton, I designed original courses. I'm teaching an original course for the first time ever in this shrunk down form called Message in a Bottle. And I'm teaching the students everything there is to know about messaging. So they're learning how to answer questions in written interviews, answer questions while sitting on a panel, answer questions in a live interview where you only have 2.5 minutes to talk about a really complex subject. And then their midterm was a panel. The next week, which is this week, they're all doing their own J-Talk. So J-Talk, of course, is me ripping off TED Talks, right? But my TED Talk went viral in 2014, and people want to know how to give a talk. And most talks are just lectures. And what I'm teaching them to do is do everything very conversationally. But what's so interesting about this class is that they had to choose one message at the top of class, at the first class, and all throughout class, they've just been hammering down that same message so that when they leave, they can apply their skills to any other message they want to. But this is all about one message. Each student has one message. One of them is talking about how sometimes it's okay to commit a crime when you're seeking justice and climate change. Another person is talking about arbitration, which is like a whole different subject. I have one student talking about teams, and I have another student that's talking all about internet presence and how we've been taught that internet activism is how much you post, not how you post. And so it's been really fun working with them on that one message, teaching them how to clean up their social media. I always tell people make mistakes on social media. I didn't grow up with it. My students have never lived a day without social media.
Yeah.
So they might have made mistakes in the past. And one of the failures that we always do is we wait till we get caught to clean up our social media. Like Kevin Hart, when he lost the Oscars, it was because of an old tweet. And so I tell them, you got to delete stuff. You got to know that the internet stays forever, and then you have to clean up what you did, like take ownership. So it's a really, really fun class. But again, I have a global classroom. So I have people coming from all different cultures, all different native languages, and the class has become fascinating. Like I sit there and I'm like, tell me more about Senegal, and
Yeah.
it's just so fascinating having students who are Arab and Vietnamese, and I get access to a little diversity in the States, but not like this. It's been so much fun.
Do you have, I mean, do you feel like you are a better storyteller now than you were when you did that viral TED Talk?
No, I think I'm a different storyteller. I think that I think for my life, believe it or not, I nailed it at that talk. Like I nailed it. There's two things I would change in that talk. When I talked about comedians who influenced me, I said Roseanne, and she turned into like a horrible, 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 grotesque person.
Was the other one Bill Cosby?
No, thank God. It wasn't Bill Cosby, thank God. Oh my gosh. But Roseanne,
Yeah.
I wish I had said Richard Pryor, because Richard Pryor is actually my biggest influence. But in that moment, I wanted to use a woman's name. And at that time, she wasn't grotesque. She turned into like a nasty supremacist who said the most obscene things after I had done it. Now, in the modern day, Jay-Z, my talk is called 99 Problems and Palsy is Just One. A reference to Jay-Z, knowing who Jay-Z is now, is like, oh God, how do I get rid of that? But the big error was I ate a word. So whenever I talk about disabilities, I talk about visible disabilities like mine. I have cerebral palsy. You can see my mouth is hanging down and my hands are all over the place. It's visible. And then I talk about invisible disabilities like mental health issues or fibromyalgia where your body. And when I was on stage, I ate the word visible. Like I wanted to say it, but I ate it. So I was just like, losing disability. And so it sounded like I said, disability, much like race, can't be played. And it completely erased all the invisible disabilities that you can't see, unintentionally, because I did try to say that word. That's why I would change. But that talk was a banger. Like I wouldn't change it, and I don't think like, oh, 7 years later I could do, or oh my gosh, it's 11 years later. 11 years later I could do better. What I think is now who I am would deliver a totally different message. I would choose for my message to be a totally different thing. Because now, like at the time that I did the TED Talk, it was all about bullying and positive representation saving lives. Now, the cornerstone of my life is that the future is disabled, right? We are living through one of the largest mass disabling events in history. And so the future is going to be disabled, and we need to design for it, plan for it. And I feel like I've trained for this my whole life, right? I'm queen of the disco. Disco is disability community. And
Mm-hmm.
so like, I'm here to meet the moment now and be like, okay, now we have all these new disabled people. How do we make it easy for them? How do, between life and death is disability. If you live long enough to grow old, you're probably going to get a disability. Maybe you'll have a walker, maybe the glaucoma gets your eyes, maybe you're like, I can't hear you. But if you live long enough, inshallah, you probably will develop a disability. But we now have a generation of children who are like not just visibly disabled, but disabled in the most severe ways. And we need to create an accessible future for them. So I think my TED Talk, if I redid it today, would be all about how do we design a utopia for all of the people who become disabled, are born disabled, knowing that the future is disabled.
Who is the we that you're talking about, Maysoon?
Who's the we that I'm talking about?
Who's the we that needs to build this utopia?
The people with the ability to do so.
Yeah.
So, do we think that we're going to leave the world not rebuilt? I'm being very careful with my words, obviously.
Yeah.
So, I love to use Qatar as an example. When I went to the World Cup, they built those cities in 12 years. In 12 years, right? And as they built those cities, they built it with accessibility in mind
Mm-hmm.
because they
Yeah.
made the stadiums, the hotels, the trains, the sidewalks, they made everything accessible because the assumption was we need to make everything accessible in order to fit in the framework of a world event in which we're going to have people of different abilities. So that brand new space was built accessible. Right now, as we speak, California is burning to the ground.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in California, but I lived in California from 2006 to 2009. It's burning to the ground and it will be rebuilt. They will rebuild it. And when they rebuild it, it should be universally accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But the other we is teachers. Teachers. How do teachers teach students who are nonverbal? How do teachers teach students missing 4 limbs? How do we make sure that our teaching and our classrooms are accessible and open to this new generation of kids? And how do we make sure that nobody's warehoused, that nobody's left behind? It's a different group in each place, right? In California, you're going to hope that the government does something when they're rebuilding. But mostly it falls on private citizens with private buildings. If you're going to rebuild your restaurant that was burned to the ground, now you have a choice to start over again.
Yeah.
When we're talking about impoverished areas, I don't know who the we is. I don't know. I'm currently like dreaming of how I'm going to rebuild everything that burned down in my country, which is not America, but in my country. How are we going to do that? But I actually don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know who the helpers are, but I think we exist. And I think that people in the world are aware and want to do better. And that maybe if people are coming in to help, we can just make sure, hey, we love the help, but let's be cognizant of what's happening with these kids.
I want to talk about the shows that you're putting on this week, because you're putting on two. One on the 15th.
I'm putting on 3, 2 at NYU and 1 at Ajman University.
Oh, صح. So for people listening, we're recording this on Tuesday, January 14th. I hope that this is going to come out in the next couple of days. But there's a show tomorrow in English. There's a show on the 17th in Arabic. And then there's a
Yes.
show in Ajman. Tell me the difference between these shows and why there are three. Is it three of the exact
No.
same shows?
So
Tell us about
I,
them.
as a comedian, never do the exact same show. I always say I have my beginning and I have my end. And in the middle, nobody knows what's going to happen. It's whatever I'm motivated to do. And that's more true than ever because my entire life has been teaching these students. So it's not like I stepped back and I was like, hey, this would be great. The
Yeah.
difference between English and Arabic is this. Arabic is a totally different language. I don't just translate what I say in English in Arabic because the way that I use the Arabic language is so different. I always say to people, I can say one word in Arabic like satah, right? What does that mean in English?
Mm.
What does it mean? If you're going to translate satah the way that I use it in sentences, it means I hope someone pops you, like pops your stomach open. Like kind of what I want to do to DJ Khaled when I see him eating makluba. Satah, that's what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just stab. It doesn't mean stab. It doesn't mean harm. It just means I really hope that you pop open and all your innards fall out. That's not funny in English. That's hilarious in Arabic. So the language itself is more colorful. I
Yeah.
love doing stand-up comedy in Arabic, and my accent is a Shami Levant Fallahi Palestinian accent.
Yeah.
So I know that it's a challenge sometimes for people who speak different accents, but for me, it's so much fun. And
Yeah.
now, because people are so used to listening to Fallahi on the news, they understand me a lot better. And English, I'm not talking about totally different subjects. It's not like, okay, I'm speaking English, so I'm not going to talk about growing up in the village of Dedouane with my grandparents. It's just, I might go harder on pop culture and news and current events in English, where I feel like Arabic is so family. It's just family. I love to talk about my family in Arabic and my life in Arabic and my kids in Arabic. And that's what I like to do. It becomes just, it's a language that reminds me of sitting with my aunts while they were all cross stitching, and they would sit, and we had no internet, and we had no TV, and we had no telephones, like no mobiles. I know I look amazing, but yes, I'm not old. And we would sit while they cross stitched, and they would just gossip about
Yeah.
everyone in town. And they would say things like, oh, we went to that wedding and she looked like someone beat her with a broom and dragged her behind a donkey. How does a bride look like that? And from them, I kind of took the kada and took the idea of like my Arabic shows. I treat them as if I'm sitting on the floor drinking coffee and just tearing people up, but not bullying, not taking people down, but finding the comedy and the light and the humor in everything. Because I look at the entire world through a lens of comedy. There's
Yeah.
nothing, no trauma that I face without thinking, this is going to be hilarious if I survive it. And I think that's more what the Arabic show is, but they're equally hilarious. Now, Ajman, it's going to be a mix. It's going to be Arabish because, like, I talk to American people all the time and I use Arabic all the time. I'll be
Yeah.
like, Yalla, let's go. Or I'll be like, it's Kalatat. And they're like, what are you saying? And I'm like, use the context to see. So Ajman is going to be kind of a potpourri of both. But what's so exciting about both shows, NYUAD and Ajman, we have ASL interpreters, and we have English Sign Language, obviously, for the English, Arabic Sign Language for the Arabic, and Ajman we have two who are like just battling. And I love watching interpreters interpret comedy, because when you're doing it right, you crack them up and they stop being able to do anything. And when I crack up my interpreter, I'm like, yes, banger, Um, it's so important, Mikey, that all of my shows are absolutely accessible. So
Yeah.
the NYU AD Theater is wheelchair accessible. We're going to have sign language interpreters on stage. I am very fluent in audio descriptions. I make sure to kind of make sure that my people with visual issues can still kind of listen to me. The people I can't help are neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent and I'm really like twitchy on stage and I'm all over the place. I keep touching my hair. So if you're someone who's easily distracted, I'm a fiesta. Like I'm just a party. You're like, what is she doing? Why is she touching her hair? Why are her legs shaking? What is she doing? But we're trying really hard to make it as accessible as possible to as many people through using different languages, through using sign language interpreters, through making sure that the theaters that I step foot in are always, always accessible. And you don't find that everywhere.
Yeah.
Often theaters are accessible to the audience and not to the artist, because they assume that we won't be wheelchair users or that we won't need, that we can just run up the stairs onto the stage. The NYU Red Box is one of the most beautiful theaters I've ever set foot in and is completely accessible.
The Red Theater.
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
the Red I love it.
It's funny. My mom is a performer and she's been disabled her entire life, have accessibility issues her entire life. And it's like, whenever she's choosing venues to perform in, it's always like, which ones can she even get to?
No, I toured the Arab world with someone who can physically lift me and put me on stage. Like literally, like that was a
Really?
requirement of my assistant to be able to physically pick me up and put me on
Yeah.
stage, because so many stages are stairs, stairs, stairs. And for some reason, those stairs never have a railing.
Yeah.
What kind of performer was your mom?
She's a singer. She's
Oh,
a musician. She plays piano and she sings.
oh, gorgeous. Amazing.
I have a question about the power of storytelling, right? People talk
Yes.
about the power of storytelling. Oh my God, it's such a powerful medium, the power of storytelling. Everyone needs to have the capability of the power of storytelling. Very rarely do people talk about the responsibility of storytelling.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of destructive stories,
Yeah.
right? How do you communicate that to your students? Like, okay, listen, I'm about to tell you all these secrets. These are a bunch of superpowers. I'm giving you powers. How do you
I
give them
always tell them,
responsibility?
don't lie to your audience. Like, stop lying to your audience, right? First of all, you said something that was interesting. We all need to be good storytellers is not true. Some of us are storytellers, some of us are listeners, some of us are amplifiers. So the first thing I always tell my students is, if it's not your subject, if you don't know how to talk about it, don't talk about it. Don't sit there and talk about stuff you don't know just because you want to be on the news program, on the panel, be interviewed. Talk about what you know. Talk about what makes you passionate. And when I talk about like what we shouldn't do, I toured for 5 years. I'm calling them out because I don't care. I've literally nothing to lose anymore. It's me and God, and that's it. I toured for 5 years with Brene Brown, Glennon and Doyle, Amanda Gorman, etc. And one of the things that these women did that I thought was so destructive was they were always giving women advice that wasn't realistic for anyone who wasn't a millionaire.
Mm,
So they would come in and be like, leave your job, sell your car, and go live in the mountains and look at the sunrise. And I'm like, I'm sorry, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the woman that has to work 2 shifts and only sees her children when they're asleep at night, makes them breakfast to wake up to, and goes back to her shift? Is she supposed to just leave her life and do it? So I tell them all the time, like, don't lie. Don't assume that the entire audience has the the privilege that you do, and decide what it is that only you can tell the world. What's the story that only you can tell? If we're all going to talk about time being precious, we're going to come at it from all these different lenses. And we have a huge challenge right now, which is everyone's using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And they believe that that's the way to talk to people, that you just, here it is, I put it in Chat GPT and now I'm going to tell it to you. No, tell the story that only you can tell. Your mom and I are both disabled performers. I have a completely different story than she does. And if I try to tell her story or tell the story of what it's like to be, a Black woman in Kansas, that's not my story to tell. Tell your story. Don't take other people's stories and tell them. Don't think that you can speak with authority on anything that you haven't lived. Anything you haven't lived, you can't speak on with authority. I was paralyzed by the Pfizer vaccine. I was paralyzed from my nose to my toes. I was in the hospital for 3 months. It was kind of hilarious because the cerebral palsy makes me shake all the time. The Pfizer vaccine paralyzed me. So I was a shaking, paralyzed person that couldn't move. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, if I'm going to get paralyzed, I need the CP to go away and not still be there while I can't move, right? I'm like, whatever. I've always thought I was such a great disability advocate. I pass the mic to people all the time, but I thought I knew what I needed to know. When I was paralyzed, I suddenly had people carrying me to and from the bathroom, bathing me. And one of the most frustrating things, I couldn't drink water by myself. I had to wait from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. when my family wasn't allowed to be there because the visiting hours end. I had to wait for a nurse to come in to just give me water. And that changed my entire view of what it was to be a disabled person who was completely 100% dependent on having an aid. And I knew how often disabled people who couldn't talk were dismissed, and how often people would say, oh no, his mom is talking for him. It's not him. And then I was the nonverbal person. And then I was the wheelchair user. And then I was the person who couldn't bathe by myself. And let me tell you something, we need to destigmatize people who can't go in the bathroom by themselves. One of the ways that people make fun of Donald Trump all the time is saying that he wears a diaper. So freaking what? So freaking what? Why are we people who make fun of that? That's not what we should make fun of. It can happen to you tomorrow the way that happened to me. I thought I was done. I was like, Rabna Atani CP, I'm done. I got another disability. And I know that it was so that I could do the advocacy I do better and understand what that means. So I really do believe that I learned so much more having lived through that than I ever thought I knew. So in addition to being a storyteller that talks about what you know, never stop learning.
Yeah.
Never stop expanding your message. Your message can always evolve. It can always get better. And by the way, everyone go to my Instagram and my YouTube, because I'm actually hilariously funny, even though this is very serious. But my website got destroyed. So I used to always say, go to Maysoon.com. You can
What happened
see
to your
all of my
website?
clips. I had a web designer who disagreed with my politics.
You're kidding
And
me.
yeah, so I had paid for the full website in 2020. And his only job was to do minor updates, like
Yeah.
put up the, NYUAD shows, put up the show that I'm doing at Joe's Pub Disco. If I have a new podcast like this, add it to our clips. But he disagreed with my politics, And I was in Palestine for 3 weeks before I came to NYU because I went to Christmas in Palestine. I mean, Jesus was born there, I went. And the day that I landed, he destroyed my entire website from top to bottom. So he erased absolutely everything, and it just says Maysoon at the top, and there's nothing on any of the pages. So I can't send people to the website.
Wow.
And this is also another way that storytelling changes. If you had done this to me before I got paralyzed from my nose to my toes, I would flip out. I'd be like, my website, how am I going to live? How am I going to work? It's my calling card. After you get paralyzed from your nose to your toes, you're like, at least I'm not paralyzed from my nose to my toes. At least I don't have tubes coming out of my neck giving me a transfusion. Website's gone. I'm still here. I don't care. So it really helped me also not flip out about things that would normally send me over the edge.
Yeah.
The one thing, though, that you didn't ask me about that I just want to throw out
Please.
there is my entire career got decimated in America. So I'm starting over.
Why do you
And
think I mean, obviously it got
I mean,
decimated
I
over
know why it
America.
got decimated. I'm Palestinian.
Yeah.
I sat on stage at Sundance and I said the following sentence: no other child should be killed after this day. And if you think that killing children makes you safer, you're a monster. Because you think it makes you safer, you are a monster and you need help. Please, everybody, use your voices to stop the slaughter. It must end. No other child should die after today. Please, I'm begging you. Very general, very general. But the stigma against Palestinians in the United States is everywhere, and we're unprotected. We're unprotected. We're not a protected class. So if you fire someone for being LGBTQ, you're getting sued. If you fire someone for the gender, you're getting sued. If you fire someone for the race, you're getting sued. But if you fire someone for being Palestinian, it is literally considered just cause. And so first, I lost all my shows. Then the club that hosted our comedy festival sold out for, 15 years, kicked us out a week before the comedy festival. I couldn't get an academic post, and my life is actually dependent on academic posts because academia pays my insurance. And without insurance, I die. Or I guess you owe me, but like I die in a very painful way. So that's why I want academia. And who saved me? NYU Abu Dhabi saved me. They gave me the chance to teach again some of the greatest minds, I believe, of the future. They're giving me my stage, which I have missed so much. I learned how to be funny virtually during COVID. It's just not the same. I do
Yeah.
not enjoy it. I am a live performer. I love being on stage. It's all I ever want to do. And it has been suffocating to not be able to be on stage, to have show after show after show canceled, club after club. And NYU Abu Dhabi gave me everything back. And it's like, I feel like I'm starting, alhamdulillah, 2025, the way I'm meant to. I'm teaching. I'm making the funny in Arabic, I'm riding a weird car boat in the middle of a bay, and I'm not compromising any of my beliefs, any of my loves, any of the things that mean the most to me. I don't have to give them up, and I'm still being given a stage. And I really think that, like, that's it. When you said who's the we, the Middle East is the future. We're building a utopia here so that we never have to go west unless we want to. Everything you want is here. Everything you could ever want is in this area. But also this area is broken in so many different ways. Like the violence, we can't pretend it's not happening. And that needs to stop. But when we say we, I feel like this is the future. I
Yeah.
really don't feel like I need, Well, NYU is an American institution, let's
Yeah.
be clear about that. But I don't feel that here. I really feel like I'm in the Arab world, and I love it. I love the Arab world. I see my future here. I don't see my future there. I'm doing everything in my power to stay here forever. So tomorrow night when I'm on stage, I'm going to be eyeing the audience to see that, kind of like 80-year-old divorced guy has enough kids to marry so that I can just stay here forever, but also not have to like work hard on a marriage.
Yeah. I don't
You
know.
said yeah.
I don't know if you heard it first, but whoever's listening, you heard it here. Feel free.
Feel free, but you have to have kids already. I don't need someone who's like, I still want to have kids, giving me problems and a headache. I need someone who already has kids. Maybe his wife is dead and the kids want daddy to be happy. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the divorced guy whose kids are crying about wanting daddy to be back with mommy and mommy's posting crazy things on the internet. We're looking for someone who's a widower, has his kids already, and is going to leave all his money instead of just an eighth to me.
Very clear.
Very clear.
Okay, we're manifesting it.
We are. I think that we also have to manifest the fact that I'm 15 minutes late to
Yes.
everything in my life. And I have to say bye to you.
Yeah.
But I feel like even though your life is so overwhelming, there's a missed opportunity to co-host a podcast with me.
Please, if you're listening to this, let us know if you think that Maysoon and I should. I don't think only co-host a podcast. I think we should go on tour together. I think that's really.
Well, yeah, I think we should do both. We tour, and then backstage in the green room when we're waiting for everything to happen, we do
Real
a
podcast
podcast,
happens.
and then we have people send in what they want us to ramble
Correct.
about.
Okay, everybody, that's it. We're going to make sure that Maysoon is not 16 minutes late. You have so many things happening this.
17 minutes
You're
late.
17 minutes
It's
late.
so over.
You have so many things happening this week. Thanks so much for making time.
I do. So I hope that this comes out in time for people. You can go. It's so easy to find us, but Maysoon NYU. Just
Yeah.
Maysoon NYU. And my name is Maysoon, like the month of May is coming soon. If you put Maysoon NYU in the search, because I have no website, but we'll find
We're going to
someone
link
who does.
everything.
You can still, buy tickets, but they're not forever. They are absolutely going to sell out. So move now. And if you speak Arabic, go to the Arabic show. And if you speak English, don't think that the Arabic is funnier. They're both hilarious. The Arabic is just, for an Arab speaker, a real treat because there's not that many people doing this in Arabic. They're doing it on TikTok, but very few of us do it live. And so come and see me via Falaha. I'll tell you about my cats, my divorce, my dad, teaching, Mikey, the whole 9 yards.
كل شيء. Okay. Maysoon يعطيك ألف عافية. Thanks so much.
Salam ya Mikey.